high cholesterol and blood pressure definitely runs in my mother's side, and cancer runs really big in my mother's side of the family. And my father's side of the family is diabetics and high blood pressure, and my dad died with Parkinson's. And so I've had every reason in the world to try to figure out how not to live that way or how not to die that way.
Welcome to the Plant-Based Eating Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Anna Zinn, plant-based registered dietitian and transition coach. Hi friend, do you want to regain your health with plant-based eating but feel overwhelmed and lost about how to do it? Do you feel it'll be hard to change your meat-heavy diet and impossible with working, running the home, or chasing after the grandkids? If so, you're in the right place. Here you'll find simple strategies, clear nutrition guidance, and practical tips to help you thrive plant-powered with more energy. So if you're ready to ditch the guesswork and transform your health the stress-free way, cozy up now with a hot cup of tea or listen while you walk, and let me show you how doable plant-based eating can be. Let's do this. Hi friend, welcome to this episode. As you know, I love to interview members from my own community because each has such a unique and inspirational story to share of how plant-based eating has impacted their health and changed their lives. And it's especially refreshing to hear the experiences of guests who have been plant-based eating for different lengths of time. So far on this podcast, we have heard from guests who have started as early as 5 weeks into this lifestyle to a few months. And today we'll be able to hear from a guest who has lived this lifestyle for more than a year. In this episode, I'm welcoming Susan as a special guest to this podcast. Susan is a member of my Beginners for Plant-Based Diet Success Facebook community, and I'm excited to have her join us. Hello, Susan. Welcome to the show. To start us off, could you tell us just a little about yourself and your background?
All right. Well, I'm from the Birmingham, Alabama area, and I do have a family. I'm a mother of 4, and I've lived in Birmingham my entire life. So, living in the South, eating has not just been the easiest thing for health conscious people. I'm a real estate agent. I'm a very busy realtor. I actually have my own company. So I'm dealing with a lot of stress in my life and just on the go all the time with as many kids as I've had. But my last one is off to college now.
Well, I can imagine being a busy realtor and bringing up 4 children. That is definitely a feat in itself. But congratulations on your last one, moving out of the home to college.
I'm an empty nester, but I do have my mother-in-law that has moved in, and she's been with us now. This May will be 2 years. So I don't feel quite like an empty nester like I was concerned I would be. It's good. She's wonderful. She takes care of my dog and does grocery shopping and things like that for me. So that's actually a helpful situation.
Yes, that's definitely a blessing to have her there to help you. Could you maybe just go into how different was your lifestyle before you moved to plant-based eating? What was your diet and eating like?
Well, growing up, I love vegetables. And I mean, we love just going to the country and eating a lot of fresh picked vegetables and fresh picked fruit. And my great grandparents would just make a table full of vegetables from the farm, like turnip greens and all kinds of beans, grains, and you name it. It was wonderful. So I've never been a picky eater. So eating vegetables has never been hard for me. But the crazy thing is, I think I may be one of these people who has this double something with your liver that creates cholesterol. And so just naturally, my cholesterol runs high. Even when I was 19, I've always been health conscious. And I had just moved out of my parents' house and I was eating salads and vegetables. But I was also always a big milk drinker. If there was ever any meat in front of me, of course I would eat it. Loved barbecue, loved egg, loved anything of that nature. But I remember even at 19, I was like 5'9". I was 120 pounds. My cholesterol was 198. So it wasn't over 200, but I was in good shape and ate what most people consider healthy. And my cholesterol was still borderline of being too high. So because of that, I have always been very health conscious and kind of stayed on top of what the latest trends were for eating healthy. I had gotten to where I thought I was eating clean, drinking whole organic milk, eating what I considered to be as free range as possible, eggs all the time. And, I've just always been trying to stay up on what the latest health trends were. And then got to a point where I was, quote, a walking heart attack or stroke. And it made absolutely no sense. And I'm very active, working out in the gym. I've been a runner. I've played tennis, pickleball like crazy. I'm 55 years old, and nobody would consider me to be overweight by any stretch. And it just makes no sense that I'm dealing with the high cholesterol, need to go to a cardiologist, or my doctor is scared that I'm going to fall dead with a heart attack or a stroke.
Thank you for sharing that, Susan. Yeah, that is pretty young at 19 to start having these high cholesterol levels. So I can understand your worry or concern about it, especially since it sounds like you have tried many different measures to try to eat healthier, eat clean, and eating those free range eggs with the whole organic milk. Probably measures that many people would be taking or consider themselves to be eating well or eating healthy on. Besides this cholesterol, did you have other health issues or diagnoses?
No, I've always had good, almost on the borderline of being low blood pressure. And I think it was because I was so active. But here recently, I guess in the last couple of years, my blood pressure had gotten up to, I think, somewhere around 135 over 80 something. And they were telling me that I was getting borderline of having some blood pressure issues. And my mother had had 5 strokes and had high cholesterol to the point where her doctor even called me one time asking if she was on drugs or alcohol. I guess I just have been very worried about that kind of stuff because of my mother's side of the family and the history with high cholesterol.
Yes, definitely. 5 strokes is a lot just in one lifetime. Were these strokes very severe or they kind of mini strokes?
She had had 4 that they found from the MRI that they took. The last one was a severe one. It was actually in her brainstem. And now her health has really deteriorated because of this stroke. High cholesterol and blood pressure definitely runs in my mother's side, and cancer runs really big in my mother's side of the family. And my father's side of the family is diabetics and high blood pressure, and my dad died with Parkinson's. And so I've had every reason in the world to try to figure out how not to live that way or how not to die that way, should I say. So everybody always thought of me as the health food freak. And even my kids' friends would come in and open up my pantry and go, all you have is nuts and gravy. Where's the good stuff? So it was really hard for me when I went to the doctor and I'm sitting there and they're telling me that my cholesterol is 300 and my triglycerides are off the charts. And I'm sitting there playing sports and working out in a gym and walking and just very active work lifestyle. And so I'm like, okay, what am I doing wrong?
Thanks, Susan, for sharing that. I can definitely understand your frustration. You feel like you're eating as healthy as you can with the eggs, the whole milk, and nuts and seeds, but then trying to figure out why your health, your cholesterol, and your triglycerides are still so high. But I can definitely understand your motivation for wanting to figure this out because of that family history with your mother with the strokes, the high cholesterol, and the blood sugar problems. And on your father's side with the Parkinson's, high blood pressure, and diabetes. And you said there was also a history of cancer. So, when did you actually begin plant based eating? What was the catalyst or turning point for you?
Well, when I went to the doctor, my annual visit with my gynecologist, She calls me and she says, "Susan, oh my goodness, your cholesterol is 300 and your triglycerides are over 200, and we can't have that. You need to go to a cardiologist." I said, "I am not going to go to a cardiologist. This makes no sense." And she said, "You probably need to be put on a statin drug. You can't just be walking around with this high cholesterol and high triglycerides like this. And your blood pressure was a little higher than normal." And I said, "I tell you what, I will go to one of these doctors that's in my community who's a little more on the holistic side. Let me go talk to them." So I made an appointment with them, and the actual doctor was a friend that I saw her nurse practitioner, and her nurse practitioner said, "We've got to get that cholesterol down. I want you eating 90 grams of protein a day." And I said, "What? 90 grams of protein? So you're asking me to eat the equivalent of a serving of chicken, breakfast, lunch, and dinner?" She said, "Yeah, that's right." And she said, "And I need you to eat, just cheese is good. I want you drinking whole milk, but make sure it's organic." I said, "Well, I'm already doing that." She said, "I want you eating organic meat, grass-fed meats." I said, "Well, I'm already doing that." And I said, "What about eggs?" And she said, "Eggs are great. Just make sure you get your protein, protein, protein in." And then on top of it, she said, "I want you taking all of these supplements." She wanted me taking 1,500 milligrams of niacin a day. She wanted me taking fish oil, and I was already taking fish oil. I was not taking niacin. She wanted me taking CoQ10, and there were a couple of other supplements that she wanted me to take. And so I was like, "Well, okay, better than going on a statin drug, right?" So I did it for a year. That was at the beginning of February. So I did what she told me to do, which was basically what I was doing anyway, except she was trying to have me to eat more meat. And then to be honest with you, there's just no way I could eat 90 grams of meat protein, but I was making sure that I had a meat and vegetables as much as I could. But I can't tell you that I really kept up with that because it made no sense to me to have to eat meat with every meal. But anyway, I got to the end of the year and I went back to my gynecologist in December. Again, she drew my blood and she calls me back and she says, "My goodness, Susan, your cholesterol has now gone from 300 to 302, and your triglycerides are insane." And I was like, "This is stupid. What in the world is wrong?" Everything online, every commercial, everything talks about protein, 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 protein. And I have a really close friend who was on dialysis for 20 years, and so we talk daily. And she was constantly telling me how it is crazy how people are eating so much protein because of how bad it is for your kidneys. Anybody who knows about kidney health, it was my friend, but how bad all that protein is for your kidneys. So anyway, my doctor called me and tells me that my cholesterol is at 302 and my triglycerides were off the chart. And she said, "Susan, you've got to go to a cardiologist." And I said, "I am not going to a cardiologist. I will go see Jesus before I get on a statin drug." And so we hang up. And she calls me the next day and she said, "I want you to know that I have lost sleep over you. Susan, you've got to go to a cardiologist. You are a walking heart attack." And I said, "Well, give me a month. I am going to figure this out." And so I started looking and I watched a documentary, How Not to Die by Dr. Michael Greger. I was pretty impressed. And then I watched The Game Changers and I was very impressed. And then I watched Sports Knives and then I was like, okay. And I started really digging into any kind of research on plant-based diets and what have you. And so I was like, okay, if this works on cholesterol, I'm doing it. I'm going to try it. And so I started doing the plant-based thing. And my husband was also diagnosed that same December, the 2nd December, with diabetes. And he is 6'5" and 200 pounds, not overweight at all, and diagnosed with diabetes. So anyway, I started doing the plant-based thing. He's counting his carbs, which is just insane and just mind-numbing, trying to take care of him and trying to figure out this plant-based where I'm supposed to be eating all these carbs and he's supposed to be watching his carbs, not eating so many carbs. So it was just crazy. But I had seen on those documentaries, it was also working for diabetic. And so anyway, I got into it. I got 3 weeks into it and I thought, I've got to figure out if this is working or not, because if it's not, I've got to figure out something else because I told my doctor only a month. So I went to a local pharmacy here who does blood panels for the state, and she drew my blood. And in 3 weeks, she was able to tell me right then, in 3 weeks, my cholesterol went from 302 to 222, and my triglycerides were so low. My blood pressure was great. And I was like, well, heck yeah, let's go. So I went home and I told my husband, and I was like, okay, this is working. This is working. And you're going to get off of metformin and you're going to do it with me. And it took about a month of him doing it with me. And then his blood sugar numbers were perfect. It's just the craziest thing. It was like, how is this information not out there for everyone?
Thank you, Susan. It's wonderful to hear what brought you over to plant-based eating. And I love that those documentaries really helped to give you that knowledge and the motivation to look more into a plant-based diet. And it's fantastic how within just 3 weeks, your cholesterol had dropped so much by 80 points and your triglyceride went down and your blood pressure normalized. That's fantastic. Even more to hear about your husband, how within a month of doing it, his blood sugars came down and improved so much. I think there's a lot to learn about your transition experience moving into plant-based eating and also about how you are able to continue to eat plant-based even despite your busy lifestyle as a realtor and taking care of your mother-in-law and so many things. So I would love to have you come back for part 2 to continue this interview. Would that be all right?
Yeah, sure. No problem.
That'd be great. So for our listeners, please stay tuned and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Plant-Based Eating Made Easy podcast. If this podcast has helped you, please take a moment to rate and leave a written review on the Apple Podcast app or on iTunes. Knowing how this podcast has made a difference in your life never fails to light me up. I may also select your review to be read on the show. Remember that moving to plant-based eating can be simple and doable, even with your existing health challenges and busy lifestyle. If you have a plant-based diet question you'd like me to answer on this show, share that question with me using the contact options in the show notes. Thanks for joining me today, and I can't wait to connect with you again in the next episode. Until next time, keep plant-focused and thriving, my friend.